Broadcasting now.
Says
Broadcast
live.
video is live. So the topic of this hangout I titled Atheist Blasphemy. And there's a reason why I called it that. Oops. Oh man, my microphone cable just went a little wacky. There's a reason why I called it Atheist Blasphemy. And it's because, without a doubt, it seems like, as an atheist, I have done something that is blasphemous, and that is oh goodness, as always, I do this all the time. I don't mute my YouTube channel when I have it on. So the reason why I have done something blasphemous in the atheist community is because apparently I've done something a little taboo, which is I misrepresented somebody. At least that's what the fallout of an interview I did last night seems to be painted as. And let's be frank, I had a Christian on my show that was part of a debate. So the Christian's name was Tim, BibleThumpingWingnut, and he had a debate with Alex Botten. And I gave Tim pretty much free range to explain his position. And I admitted that he had a very clever technique in having his discussion with Alex. And I did put the screws to him about certain things, especially external versus internal critique and other things. I also did have him be answerable to the primacy of existence argument, but the thing that people seem to be focusing on is the fact that, or not the fact that, but the perception that I threw Alex Botten under the bus. And that seems to be what the hot topic is today. So, I throw it out to the panel. Did I throw Alex Botten under the bus? Did I do something wrong by having a civil discussion with Tim? Even though my intention was correct, is the optics of what I did being misperceived? I put it out to the panel.
You know, it's hard to know exactly what people would think, but I think that whether or not Alex would feel thrown under the bus might be more if he came up in the discussion. You know, not so much the way that you dealt with Bible Thumping Wingnut, but how did you talk about Alex with him in that? I didn't catch all of it. I didn't have time to, but I would have, you know, if he felt that you didn't validate him strong enough, I could see how he might feel thrown under the bus. But also, you know, there's so many shows out there where you have someone. I've seen some of the Bible Thumping Wingnuts shows, and the guy strikes me as being. I think you did a really good job with him, Chris, in terms of bringing him down to a conversation level, because some of the stuff I see from him, there's no conversation really going on, and let's face it, those of us who are theists and those who are atheists, we've been in so many different discussions with people who can be, both knowingly and unknowingly violating to us, you know, and so tensions can raise high, and I did see more of the show that involved Alex and Bible Thumping Wingnut, and I can't imagine that Alex is feeling at all good about Tim and the way he behaved. So you know, I could see where he might feel as though had you you know, taken more of his side, you would have held Tim more to task for that. But I didn't get a chance to see all that. But at the same time, you know, your show is your show, his show is his show, and you need to deal with each of these things, each one for what they are. And that's not an easy thing to do. I'll tell you something that pastors get caught up in many times. You know, people think, I don't know why, people think that pastors are marriage experts, you know, and they come to us, and you've got to talk to a husband and a wife, and you have to deal with them. And boy, I tell you, they both want you to take their side, and they don't want you to take the other side. And that's not an easy situation to be in. And the way I usually handled it was, rather than take a side, I dealt with each person as if the position that they are perceiving things from is the position they're experiencing things from, and without any regard to its reality, I deal with them there. And I let them know that's what I'm doing. So I'm not taking a side. I'm merely empathizing with them and their perspective, where they're coming from. I don't know, you know. So I thought you did well, but and I think that that Alex, if he's not happy with it, I can totally understand it. The show that I watched with Alex in Bible Thumping Wingnut was was absurd.
And what did you find absurd about it, Bob?
There was no real conversation going on that I could see. Nothing of any real significance, and I didn't get the impression that the Bible Thumping Wingnut was listening or hearing or considering. I mean, you know, it's very important in any discussion with anybody, without regard to the degree that you agree or disagree. It's always important to seek to find a way of understanding where another person is coming from, and being able to somehow embrace how it's possible that a genuine, authentic, intelligent human being can see things this way, and to respect that. You know, that's not an easy thing to do, I suppose, but it doesn't happen a lot, and I certainly didn't get the impression anything that was happening, you know, in that particular show from Tim.
Does anybody else have something to chime in?
I got tons to say.
All right, Ozzy.
I do as well, but I want to take a back seat for a while. And Ozzy, go for it.
Okay. Well, just by way of a little background, Bible Thumping Wingnut has for a long time been boasting that his presuppositional argument is unassailable, and that anyone who's ever confronted it has lost. It doesn't matter who, and it doesn't matter which presuppositionalist was presenting it. It seems he thinks the presup argument always wins. And he also boasted that he never runs from a fight. And this inspired Alex to say, okay, well, let's debate this. I challenge you. I've sort of gone to school on this and had plenty of experience dealing with presuppositionalists, and I got, you know, a pretty bad beat the first time I encountered it because I didn't know what was coming my way. But, you know, I've learned and changed my mind about some things, and let's go. But Bible Thumping Wingnut was reluctant to enter into this despite some boasts, and Alex, I think, made a mistake here. He just hectored him and pestered him in private messages and in public challenges, and, you know, sort of making him look foolish for having made this boast and then being unwilling to do this, you know, challenging him and saying that you apparently you never run from a fight, yet you're running from me. Finally, he hectored him and pestered him into agreeing. And when you do that, of course, you shouldn't expect a friendly encounter and a open-minded exchange. So it would have been unrealistic. Now, of course, Alex is not naive. He's not a stupid man. He knew that it was going to be a hostile exchange, and he went in there, you know, packing heat, ready to, you know, buttonhole Tim. And Tim, I think, did a terrible thing. I don't think he owed Alex very much, given the circumstances under which he felt sort of coerced into going ahead with it. But he did agree to debate this. And what he did instead was try to discredit Alex by playing a pile of sound bites where Alex had changed his mind on various positions over the years, which is just completely irrelevant. It's just not an argument. It doesn't defend one's own position. It doesn't actually attack the present position that's before you. So it was just completely ad hominem.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that Alex did a really good job. I didn't agree with all of his arguments. I thought some of his arguments were fallacious, but some of them were good, and he certainly exposed an unwillingness and an ignorance on the part of Tim to defend his position. Now, Where I think Alex went wrong again, though, was he was ungracious in victory and started sort of saying things that were calculated, I think, to embarrass and humiliate him. Now, it has to be said that the animosity between the two of them in some of their email exchanges that Alex sort of posted in videos reveals that these two guys really don't like each other at all. So I understand why he wanted to shame him and humiliate him, but it wasn't the right thing to do. And I think that it sort of robbed Alex of a kind of a pure win in a debate where one person basically doesn't even fight, but tries to ad hom his way through the whole thing, and then it would have been a pure win, except that Alex kind of stooped to sort of crushing him and shaming him, and then Tim did sort of tactically at that point the smart thing, which is just take it and pretend to be a martyr while the big bad evil angry atheist, stomps all over him. And then that is all that the supporters of Tim can see now, is that aspect of it. And I didn't actually see much of that because I joined a post-debate hangout before the whole thing ended. I missed a lot of that, actually, and it was only the next morning that I saw it, and I thought, oh, geez, I wish Alex hadn't done that, because it seemed to me he really did pretty good in the first half, and then he kind of left a bad taste in my mouth with that other thing. Now, I think for that reason, I agree with Christopher saying, let's bring Bible Thumping Wingnut on, and let's acknowledge the fact that Alex did this kind of thing, that he was ungracious in victory here. I didn't agree with all of Chris's characterizations of it, though. I don't know that it constitutes throwing him under the bus, but Christopher, it has to be said, really did an admirable job of completely disarming Tim and getting him to finally answer a bloody question and present some of his case and some of his arguments and expose where obviously he doesn't know what he's talking about in this case. And I mean, I thought that was admirable, and he did it without being rude and obnoxious, and where there wasn't anything that any of Tim's supporters could point to in there and say, oh, look at these angry atheists, living up to the stereotype of the angry atheist. Look at this, right? There was nothing in that. So I actually commend Chris for having done that, but I don't agree with everything that he said. I thought it was a little uncharitable at times how he characterized Alex's attitude and all of that. I mean, it's. I think both of them in that debate that night got what they deserved from the other. They, you hector someone into a debate, you shouldn't expect a friendly fight.
I wasn't aware of all that prehistory to the. It did strike me as a conversation not going well.
Yeah, there were reasons why it wasn't going well. There was some real animosity and vitriolic exchanges that preceded all of this, and I don't know. I mean, there might even be more to the story. And I should say also that Alex feels, I think, hurt by this, because what Tim has done subsequent to this is make a series of completely dishonest and misrepresentative videos of more sound bites out of that in order to try to wring a victory out of this defeat. I mean that's annoying. That's bloody insulting. And so I think that Alex would kind of like to be done with this chapter and put it behind him, and then this sort of happens, and now he's got Tim and Tim's supporters sending him, saying, "Oh, look, even the atheists are saying that you did this wrong or did that wrong," and so I think that's got to be galling.
Again.
That's got to be galling.
We're getting a feedback from Dr. Shook.
Yeah.
How's that? Oh, no, Dr. Shook, you need to mute yourself, I think.
Yeah, whatever I got going is incompatible with the system. Chris, why don't you mute me?
Are you hooked up to any earbuds?
I'm hooked up to everything Chris hooked me up with. So
Okay, well,
I'm going to throw him under the bus.
I'm just gonna, there.
Sounds good to me.
Can someone else mute? No, I was just asking if I could mute Dr. Shook, but no such luck. There. No, that didn't work. Okay, well, on to someone else, perhaps.
There you go.
Oh, it's working now?
It's going on. Yep.
Oh, very good. Okay. So all I said was this has to be galling to Alex, because he'd kind of like to be done with close this chapter, and then as soon as he sort of feels like I won a fairly decisive victory, even if it was besmirched a little bit by some character assassination at the end. Nevertheless, it's got to come back to haunt him, because now Chris has done this thing where he brings his opponent onto the stage. And gives him a platform to express only his side of the story, and Chris described the actions of Alex in a way that I thought was uncharitable at times, but I mean not excessively so, and I mean nothing that I think should have infuriated Alex to such a degree. I mean I can understand why it's irritating, but not that big a deal, I don't think.
Did we lose Chris? Is Chris gone?
Does someone else want to step in as moderator then?
Can folks hear me okay now without a lot of feedback?
I can hear you, yeah.
Yep, I hear you
No,
just
I'm
fine.
good. I'm good, actually. Just set up alone.
Okay, just if you need.
Yeah, if they're not hearing any bad feedback.
Not from you. Yeah.
I've received a lot of calls, a lot of emails, a lot of private messages about this today, and I'm very concerned about all of the rhetoric that's going on. Simply because I find that, Christopher is always kind on his shows. He shows a lot of respect, and I think that since he was looking at this particular individual, that is the Bible-thumping wingnut, I think that he was taking more of a therapeutic approach, that is trying to get him to commit to various things, and I think he did well there. I'm not convinced that when he would agree, in a sense, that he was agreeing actually to what he was saying, but I think that he was just saying okay, and trying to get him to give a little bit more detail out about his worldview, etc. But I know that Alex is sensitive right now, and I think that he's a wonderful person. I think that he's doing a wonderful job. I would encourage him to continue what he's doing. But I really don't think that Christopher threw him under the bus at all. I think that it was just part of the conversation. And it's difficult for any host sometimes to keep focused, especially when you have a lot of content coming to you that is in the form of private messages, text messages, etc. And so I don't know how much mishearing, misspeaking actually went on in that show. And so Chris's intention throughout the show, I think was very good. So when you look at his past history, or his through his shows, if you know his character, I don't see anything about Chris that would throw Alex in any sense under any kind of bus. He's too respectful, he's too kind, he gets along with everyone, so I think that it was unfortunate that people misconstrued Chris, the show, and his intent.
I think when it comes to people like the Bible-thumping wingnut, we really need to work at getting the rhetoric down to a face-to-face level instead of face-off. Yeah, I still, it looks to me like Dr. Shuck's speaker's the one that's. If you move, can you move the mouse in front of you, Dr. Shuck? There's a mouse in front of you. You notice if you move it that you'll see this these icons up at the top. That one is a microphone.
Yeah.
When you're not speaking, click on the microphone. It goes red. And then, yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good. It's all better now.
Yeah, it's all better.
Yeah.
That's what it was. Yep.
Yeah. And then when you need to speak, though, you'll have to click on that so we can hear you, because you don't echo when you talk back, but I could see that it was coming through your speakers there. Yeah, it's unfortunate because we're really trying to build a community here of people who traditionally are not really talking to each other, and in doing that, there's a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of ways in which things have not always gone well. And so we're really trying to do something here. We're even trying to bring people into the conversation who might have a past that involves this wild and dramatic non-conversation. So something like this is bound to happen from time to time, and I certainly hope that Alex, who has a lot to offer, can find it in his heart to kind of work with this, because he's got a great deal to offer. We need the kind of things he can do, and we need Chris to be doing what he's doing, and finding ways of moving on from this.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Shook.
Oh, if folks can hear me all right. I really like a point that you were making, Bob, about these conversations having histories, which means they kind of have an organic development. It shouldn't be a big mystery unless you've just shown up. I've been tracking debating among religious and non-religious people for 15 years, participating for 7. 15 years ago, this kind of slick, stuttering presuppositionalism really wasn't around. There was lots of presuppositionalism of varying intellectual types, some not so good and some pretty sophisticated. But what we're seeing lately with this just refusing to even have a conversation kind of presuppositionalism is what I would call just lazy presuppositionalism that no actual PhD presuppositionalist would really endorse very enthusiastically or teach even to undergraduate students. So I think I don't know, I'm going to throw it out there. I think this lazy presuppositionalism is a creature of atheism. I think we helped make it. I think that the new atheism and this lazy presuppositionalism are closely organically related. There's a reason why atheists who want to be the most confrontational go seek out the most fundamentalist and frankly, kind of limited presuppositionalists. What reason is that? Well, in some ways, they're mirror images of each other. They end up using the same tactics against each other. I don't know if they're intentionally learning them from each other, but it just sort of turns out in the history of those interactions that that's all they end up using against each other. And so, it's just now repeat, rewind, repeat. But these things have histories. It got to be this way for real causes. It's not a coincidence. So when I think that someone like Chris or myself, who's been vocal about trying to use the smartest tactics possible, yeah, we're going to criticize atheist tactics, not only when they don't seem to be the best tools available, but when they actually seem to be making the problem worse. So if we can back out of these sort of dead ends, it looks bad to people who have been in those deep trenches, but they dug those deep trenches themselves, and they have no right to complain if other people find more fruitful conflicts somewhere else.
I really like what you said at the end there, that people sort of get entrenched and literally entrenched in these things and can't back out, and that sort of a more civil form of dialogue is called for to get out of those things. I don't agree with your reading of the new atheism sort of being the precondition or somehow precipitating this kind of lunk-headed presuppositionalism. I mean, I really think that is something that just sort of caught on because if you are a religious person and you've been on the receiving end of people who for a long time think they're smarter than you because you're religious, and you start to feel a little butthurt, and along comes someone who sells you an idea that you can turn the tables and say, we own reason. Reason is in the province of our religion, and everyone else is borrowing from our worldview, and all you have to do is ask them this series of questions that stump them. Then you can feel like you've really got you've turned the tables on them, and that has got to be.
I follow you, Ozzy, but that doesn't explain why we only see this lazy presuppositionalism within the last 10 years. because the conditions that you described, explaining for their behavior, existed in the 60s. It existed in the 80s. Paul Kurtz, you know, was very aggressive, you know, still sort of professorially civil, but very aggressive against religious types, and he never encountered any of this lazy presuppositionalism. So I think we have to look at available technologies, available kinds of discourse, and just sort of forces gradually sort of getting into these tight little circles of dogfights. They're related. It can't be just a coincidence, and it can't be just on the religious side. They're reacting, as you say, to an environment, and I think we helped provide the environment.
You know, part of that environment also came out of the earlier creationism movement, where beyond reasonability, many of the fundamentalists defending creationism were doing so with either bogus credentials or credentials unrelated to. When you take a look at the original Creation Research Society and find out who Dr. So-and-so is and Dr. So-and-so, you discover diploma mills, or you discover degrees in areas that aren't even related to the things they're speaking. And I think that fundamentalism went through and still goes through it, this phase of latching onto so-called peer-reviewed experts who aren't even really experts at all, and they got into this lazy, very lazy academia that they don't even realize is lazy, so that when they find somebody who can say something that is on our side and championing it and winning, and they're an expert, well, they're just so delighted, and they swallow it hook, line, and sinker. And oddly enough, I was inside the fundamentalist movement at that time when you know, Henry C. Whitcomb and the Genesis flood and all this, and I start reading it and I go, what? You know, it was like I felt a little like, you know, what am I doing here, kind of thing, and. There was no real scholarship in it at all, but these people whose view of the Bible they feel it's under attack, they love this stuff, and they feel like finally there's experts on our side in this conspiracy of the devil of, you know, and seducing people, and so I think that also was a part of what set this up, because, you know, they've been victims for a long time and silent and not involved in politics, and now they're getting, now damn it, they've had enough of being, you know, walked over, and they're coming out in politics, they're coming out and pushing with this presuppositionalism. Damn it, they've had enough of being persecuted, and I see a lot of that too, and yet in all of this they never. You know, I went to Bob Jones University. I was only there for 3 semesters, and I also went to SUNY Binghamton. And you know, it's easy for me to say this now because people know I'm no longer a fundamentalist. But the level of rigor and expectation and demand of the professors that I found at both schools was radically different. You know, they wanted me to know stuff. You know, at SUNY Binghamton, and they just wanted me to know the party line when I was at BJU. Really very different approach, and I see that academic background as being a part. Many of these precepts, you know, in an innocent sort of way, they don't realize that what they're doing doesn't have depth because they haven't dealt with the depth that way. At least that's my view.
I think I have a sense of what you're saying now, Dr. Shark, having had a little time to think about it. I mean, I don't think that it's correct to say that you know, because this presuppositionalism has sort of sprung onto the scene, that there has to be something, you know, from the opposing side that occasioned it. I don't think that's necessarily right, but I think you might actually be right in that the new atheism has certainly driven a lot of people crazy. I mean, they just can't stand that people are outspoken atheists now. And feel a certain freedom to do that, and in some cases even a kind of moral obligation to come out as atheists. And this is just bewildering and incredibly offensive to people, well, from some quarters anyway. And these people are now desperate for an apologetic that can sort of be every bit as in your face. So I'm thinking you might be right about that. I'll have to give
not
it
just
some more
in your
thought.
face. Fundamentalists, of course, going back to the 1800s, have been loud and proud, and they'll witness to your face. It's not the message so much that has changed as the method. That is to say, specifically the lack thereof. I mean, even fundamentalism out of the seminaries, the theological seminaries 2 generations ago, was much more intellectually sophisticated than what we're getting out of this lazy presuppositionalism. Presuppositionalism is a really big theological movement going back 120 years. So it's certainly not my claim that all of presuppositionalism is in reaction to atheism. Most of presuppositionalism isn't just in reaction to modernism and the historical study of Scripture and Christianity, of course, modernist trends. I'm only speaking about this lazy presuppositionalism.
Right.
Look at their method. You don't have to be intelligent to do this lazy presuppositionalism, right? You don't need any training. All you need is a YouTube channel and a halfway decent grasp of the English language, and you can do this lazy presuppositionalism to extraordinary rapturous effect. Well, and there's a version of dumbed down atheism that has also resorted to very aggressive, nasty attacks that basically amount to accusing the other side of not even possessing enough sanity or intelligence to understand the least things that you need to understand about the world, much less grasp any science or realize that the Bible can't be literally true and so forth. So I think both sides have resorted to this sort of, having the lowest common denominator and the easiest possible route to simply, antagonize each other and look like you can shift the burden of proof. Now, this is only a small fraction of atheism. This is only a small fraction of presuppositionalism. We notice it because it's loud, but I think the two things do have something to do with each other. As maybe there's some merit to it. Ozzy, you make some great points. I'm already kind of rethinking my story, but it just can't be a coincidence that these two things appeared on the scene about the same time, using the same technologies and using the same kind of media with each other. My question is, can we use these technologies for something else? And I think the answer is yes. And I think people who explore those other opportunities, like the New Covenant group, like people who like being involved with us, they shouldn't be chastised for treason and heresy just because they're looking for other ways of drawing out presuppositionalists and telling them to up their game. I would love it if we had really intellectually sound and sophisticated presuppositionalists to argue with. Oh wait, we do. They're out there. There's more of them actually than these lazy presuppositionalists. So I think we need to go find them and just find better conversations.
Most of these lazy presuppositionalists don't know the difference between the feeling that many of them will claim that only our worldview can account for reason and rationale, and most of them don't know the difference between the feeling that that is true and the fact that when you have a worldview and you confront another worldview, that from the standpoint of your worldview, you're the only one who has an account for your axioms. That's just the way we all feel. And so to think that that is a significant experience is sadly inexperienced.
Yeah. I think that really hit the nail on the head, actually, what you just said there, Bob. If I could turn back to what you were saying, Dr. Shook, we seem to both be rethinking our stories here. But what you said about the sort of media and technology, I think that might be the sort of the common denominator. I mean, with YouTube and blogging now, I mean, anybody can do it. I mean, I have no formal credentials, and I can go out there and do this. And I'm sort of new to the conversation. I've been following it for ages, and I participated in other media. I'm new to sort of YouTube, but I've been following YouTube discourse of theists and atheists for, I don't know, well, at least 8 years, as long as it's been going on, pretty much. I think the technology has a lot to do with it. There's no filtering process. There's nothing that keeps anybody out. And if you're loud and outrageous, you can get a lot of people. sort of listening to you, and of course that animates the other side, and so there can be sort of this downward spiral of quality in argumentation. And one of the reasons I've decided to sort of enter into this discussion is I think maybe I can sort of try to up it a little bit, but because I am not yet at least as caught up in it, hopefully.
As a case in point, it is a typical thing with the fundamentalist view of the Bible that God has taken common, ordinary people who possess no real credentials. That God takes the common thing of the world to stop the mouths of the noble, and that Jesus comes and he finds these dumb fishermen, and he turns the world upside down with them. That there's this view that somehow the world has betrayed God and is seduced by Satan, and all the expertise and academia that is filled with Darwinism and satanic seduced notions that just turn us all into God haters. That there's something about the lazy presuppositionalism that causes the ordinary, non-intelligent, perhaps, person to feel like, aha, I've got something here that demonstrates the real power of the Holy Spirit, because I've got an argument that even the intelligent can't respond to. And there's a part of it that I think really fits into this story of you need no teacher, the Holy Spirit is with you. It seems to really fit like a glove, this concept. And so from inside of the Christian movement, there's something about the way this appears to be working that really feels good, and in a sense I think it's an easy seduction for some of these people, and those who got into it, I think they really feel like we're onto something here, because it doesn't require me to be anywhere where I can raise the bar.
Yeah,
Bob, I think that is really, really interesting, and I'm really resonating with that. It occurs to me, if I could join up one little piece of my puzzle up next to yours, because maybe there's a fit. Theology isn't what it was even, 40 years ago. Much of Christian theology has become very abstract metaphysics or arcane, practically indistinguishable from philosophy after the death of God movement, and God is the ground of being, as if we knew what being was, and now we have to figure out what the ground of being was. Yeah, okay, good luck with that. And theology being comfortable with doubt. So academic theology sort of just floated away, and it doesn't really speak to lay people anymore. Maybe this is sort of the poor man's theology. In other words, not only can you witness from the Bible in a very emotional way, but if you need some intellectual armament, all of a sudden it empowers the common person, like you were saying, Bob. And yeah, technically it's just a pitchfork. Really, it's not.
Right? Yeah, it's a lowest common denominator weapon.
You suddenly think you can, take down anybody with your little pitchfork, and it's, you've got now
David and Goliath all over again. David and Goliath all over again. That's what it is.
Yeah.
I wonder if I could bring this back to another point that Dr. Shook raised, which I think sort of is more pertinent to the original intention of this hangout, which is, what are atheists supposed to do about this? Because the New Covenant group is supposed to be building bridges between atheists and theists and agnostics, and here what we have is a schism within a group of atheists, and people are sort of choosing sides over this, which I think, it's a tempest in a teapot. We really should, yes, people's feelings get hurt. There are misunderstandings. Sometimes people inadvertently hurt people's feelings, but we should try to get past it. But we have to sort of guard against this idea that there's only one way to combat what we might see as sort of the larger enemy. As I see the New Covenant group, one of the things that we're doing here, building this bridge between atheism and theists, is that, look, most Christians, for instance, are not fundamentalist, and we have more in common, atheists and these Christians with fundamentalists, and we should maybe make common cause and see if we can get ourselves closer and have better dialogue and sort of get them into the sort of the people who are sort of at the most extreme into the conversation as well, and sort of have more productive discourse and less animosity. I mean, the more animosity there is, the more polarizing things get, and the more people are galvanized in their resolve to stick to their guns and adopt more extreme positions. And so I think it's important to do that, but we have to make sure that we as atheists, I mean, I'm speaking now, I'm going to try and speak, this is a mistake, but I mean, I'm going to try to speak for atheists and people in the skeptical movement. What we want to do is, if we're atheists, is we don't want to adopt a creed ourselves and say, this is the way you got to be an atheist, right? There's lots of ways to be an atheist. Now, if you're going to be a skeptic, I think, okay, look, there are norms of rational discourse. You have to be playing by those rules. If you're not playing by those rules, you need to get the hell out of the skeptical movement. And it doesn't matter if you stick the word skeptic onto yourself. You're not a skeptic unless you heed to the norms of rational discourse. Atheists, the word atheist by itself doesn't imply anything about that. But those of us who are self-described, YouTube atheists in the atheist community, I think, like to think of ourselves as skeptics and rational people and committed to the norms of rational discourse. So we got to make sure that we don't slip into a creed and start choosing sides, and we got to avoid that kind of thing.
We got to pretend you've always succeeded at it.
Yeah, or pretend we've always succeeded at it. We got to make sure that what we repudiate is irrationality, right, not the fact that someone on our side did something that might be perceived as helping the other side. I mean, that I think has to be avoided.
Something that I learned from a parenting book by Dinkmeyer, I think it was, Training in Effective Parenting. I think that something like that, I can't recall. But anyway, it really helped me as a parent, and that was this. Many parents, when they're arguing with a child or trying to make a point with a child, and the child brings back, some of your own faults, it can put you in an odd situation if you don't know how to deal with it. And I found that, at times as a parent, I'd have to say to the child, I want you to know something. I will not come to your expectation of being perfect before I have the right to be responsible for being in control here of what we're doing. And there's a sense here in which, we're all going through life for the very first time, as far as we know, and we're not going to do this perfect, and we're going to make mistakes. And if Chris could Chris have done a few things differently and better? I'm sure he could have, if he had known to, or if he realized it might made a difference. He would have. Certainly his heart was nowhere, his intentions were nowhere where we could fault him for what he was attempting to do. So, I mean, damn it, does Chris have to be perfect? Does Alex have to be perfect in order for us to be able to say, yeah, we can work together in this? Perfection is not required. We're just trying to do this,
Oh, I completely agreed again, Bob. Yeah, not perfection. All of us could use a little more perspective, though. I do feel great sympathy for folks who have engaged in the trenches with this kind of Christianity or that kind of denomination or this kind of theology, because, of course, as the sort of secular and free thought movement has grown, we've been able to start pushback against all sorts of things, and Christianity keeps changing, so we have to keep figuring out where the new battlefield is and where they're going next. So, lots of trenches everywhere. The problem is, though, if you've been working in one trench too long and you're told that there's a better battle and better tactics somewhere else, that can feel kind of hurtful. That's a little bit of a betrayal. It's like, oh, really? You don't think what I'm doing here is so important? You can feel a little bit criticized if your tactics and your battle is suddenly irrelevant and not really helpful. You want validation. We all want to feel validated and feel like we're making a difference. And it's tough to hear that there's other things that need to be done differently somewhere else.
I get that feeling every time I talk to my students about the Beatles. They don't relate like I do.
No. Well, I think if we can help everybody to feel good about the part that they're doing, suggest improvements where they can, without being condescending or abusive. But generally, we all have to work at elevating the tone and And when a trench has gotten too deep and you're not even going to be able to climb out of your own trench, even if you won it, what have you won? You've completely lost perspective. So I think it's helpful to have other forums where we can all step back, congratulate ourselves on what's been won and lost so far, and kind of reflect a bit and see where the next points of engagement need to be. We just can't be one-trick ponies all over the place.
Right. And I think engagement is a key word here, because we're really trying to kind of bring a paradigm shift away from the battle, away from the winning, towards engagement and discussion. Because after all, if we are human beings, the fact that we can't seem to live without a worldview, and the fact that we might have some different worldviews isn't really all that significant in many ways, and shouldn't be. And by the discussion and by the engagement, we can diffuse that. Because I think even as we study culture, cultures love to exaggerate differences in order to secure them. We exaggerate what it means to be a man versus what it means to be a woman, so as to make sure we're being real men or real women. And I'd often say to people, just be real with yourself, and if you happen to be a man, you'll be a real man. That's all it takes. Just be you. And I think that culturally, many times we have this need to over-categorize, and so as a result, it leads to people who are isolated from each other making bigger differences out of the way we are not the same than it really matters. And by this engagement, I hope that we get to the point where that's not the point of winning. Of course, unfortunately, some theologies don't allow for that, and that will be a problem. But I think that we could at least get to the point where we can at least engage in that conversation about how that theology doesn't allow for that, and what's up with that,
Well, right. In fact, we have to be careful about which theologies we engage, because if we are having productive engagements with sophisticated theologies where the Christians feel like, hey, at least they're being respectfully heard, they have to reason for their positions, they have to defend premises instead of just asserting them, then what happens to the lazy theologians? Well, all of a sudden, no one's paying attention to them anymore because it's unnecessary and it's not terribly enlightening even for the people who really need validation. So I think if we go out of our way to highlight the theologies truly worth debating and frankly capable of debating, I think that might take a lot of the hot air out of the balloons of these very dumbed down, I don't even dare call them theologies, they're not, they're just tricks, really. And if we quit paying so much attention to them, then they might go away a little bit.
I'm not so convinced of that. I mean, I agree with you that we sort of want to marginalize certain groups, and that you can give them a lot of oxygen by paying them too much attention. And that might have happened a little in this case, because Saitan Bruggencate, he's just this fellow from sort of the Ontario, the province that I live in, and he decided to sort of confect this dumbed down version of presuppositionalism, and I mean, I don't know where he got it exactly, or if he sort of originated this version himself, but he certainly has done a good job of selling it. And one of the ways that he's managed to sell it is by stumping people, including on shows like Alex's, but not specifically his, but venues like that, and then selling DVDs and making videos and that sort of thing that shows, look, see, I'm able to talk to these atheists out there who sort of make a point of besting fundamentalists and stuff like that all the time. And look what I did. I stumped them. They were stuck. They were running around.
Well, maybe they were stumped. Maybe few people should have done their homework and gotten advice from a logician or a philosopher before thinking that they're going to take them on in a debate with their little YouTube channel. I think they got what they wanted. Right. I think they got the views, and I think they got the notoriety, and I think they walked into things that they weren't prepared for. I don't have a lot of sympathy. Yeah, okay, so one lazy presuppositionalist was able to make a big giant fuss. Out of who? our top atheists, our top scientists, you know, leadership of national secular organizations? No, YouTube channelers. Okay, yeah. So I mean, you know, you can try to claim victories, but you know, I think everybody has to take responsibility for knowing what they're walking into before they walk into it.
How many people go to college, say they're going to study electrical engineering, and you get their gen ed out of the way, and they study also, you know, various aspects about the electricity and this and that, and they can become college graduates, and they've never ever stopped to think about some of the stumpable questions about the nature of knowledge itself, so that when they're asked this, I mean, you can even be a well-educated person, and if you've never run into this before, it can be stumping, you know, and because many people never really stop to realize, you know, we deal with some issues where we realize we're coming down to some axiomatic ideas, where we're dealing with things that we have to finally just to agree that we experience things, you know, we have to, and some people just never gotten to the point of wondering about those questions, and so these are also the people who are kind of sucker punched. They're caught unawares, never having really thought about it by somebody who knows they've got them set up, you know.
Yeah, I wish we had a sort of fast response where, you know, these pseudo theologies go viral, or these very wormy religious tactics start to infiltrate the blogosphere, and we had a sort of detect and preparedness system. Okay, you know, don't just freeze for a minute. Let's figure this out. Let's diagnose it, and we'll have a cure for it. Just don't go crazy over it yet. It's probably nothing. You know, we need a little antiviral software in our system, maybe.
Yeah.
Can I say? Oh,
go ahead.
I was going to say, just in defense of Alex and the people at Fundamentally Flawed, they actually did try to go to school on this stuff. But this was a style of apologetics that they'd never encountered before, and it really caught them off guard. And I remember, like a couple of years ago, a Facebook channel was started by the people from that podcast, where they were asking, like, hey, you know, let's talk about this, and they were sort of soliciting information. And I caught wind of this from a friend of mine, and I actually contributed a number of sort of long posts describing what I thought was wrong with it, because I was familiar with presuppositional apologetics and sort of in some of its higher forms, and I tried to sort of point some of this stuff out. So they actually did try to do this, but I think the problem is that there was a temptation to just try to answer the stumping questions instead of saying, look, I don't know the answers to those questions, but I don't know that it follows that if I can answer those questions that your religion is right, you know. So there's, I mean, people have made all kinds of videos. I mean, there are all kinds of videos out there on how to prove that you have absolute certainty about some question. Oh, well, there's the existence exists, or I think therefore I am, or there's just like
Alex Botten actually had a good question. He said I know for absolute certain that I am not your God.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good retort. I mean, that's a really good one, right? But of course, the correct answer is that, well, you know, nothing follows from that. You can't build anything on that. That shouldn't stop a presuppositionalist, and the presuppositionalist shouldn't be asking you for what you can be certain about, because that's not, you know, presuppositionalists. The force of the argument doesn't rest on the fact that you can't come up with something that you're certain of. So that's just irrelevant. But I mean, there was a sort of tendency to just want to be able to have a sort of a judo move for every one of their moves. Whatever they come up with, you got to have something back, because you want to sort of have a quick response, and I think that's where people in the atheist community made a mistake, and it's a sort of a natural and ordinary mistake to make when you're presented with a philosophical argument. Most people understand that, you know, if someone hits you with the ontological argument, you got to do some work. There's a lot of bad counter apologetics to things like Anselm's ontological arguments. I mean, the number of proper responses to the ontological argument that I've heard out there on YouTube is not great compared to the number of wrong-headed ones that completely beg the question against that argument. It's actually a subtle argument, you know, but that's another example of that, right? But presuppositionalism was one that sort of people were just unfamiliar with. And what I was getting at with Sai, he managed to sort of popularize this. It spread like wildfire. And so what I was going to say was that I don't think this is one of those things where you can just marginalize it and ignore it, because I think if you marginalize it and ignore it, this is one that, for the reasons Bob gave, fits hand in glove with the theology, the sort of the idea that no, the common man should be able to be able to scotch the objections of the sophisticate out there, and it fits so hand in glove with that I think that this has traction. This is going to sell itself. It recommends itself to people in church basements talking about, what do you do about the new atheism?
Oh, not all of the new atheism.
No, not all of it.
Just the lazy atheism. Look,
No, but they tried on everyone.
If only those two camps want to keep yabbering at each other, I don't care. Honestly, I don't
They're gonna do it.
I can't. It's too late now. I wish there was an early warning system. For better or for worse, this new presuppositionalism was cooked up, in my opinion, precisely to crash the very modest barricades of the simplest versions of the new atheism out there, and the reaction, the synthesis was kind of predictable if you think about it. No learning is being done by either side.
Has it pleased anyone other than the choir? Has it...
certainties.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, congratulations. But I don't see why the rest of atheism should have to adopt fundamentalist or presuppositionalist tactics.
Yeah.
I think you just have to expose it for what it is when it comes up, and you can't debate with something that's not coming for a debate. So I think we just need to stop thinking that there are debates going on here.
Right. And because the choir is the only people who like this tune.
I would like to ask a question, if I might. I'm very concerned about what recently happened. It really concerns me, because I think that instead of showing unity, I think that we've shown something that's not positive. That is, since the show last night, and I'm very concerned about that. But I want to make a point before I get into my question, and that is, and I think Bob can identify with this. I remember when I was this kind of theist, that if I could say that Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, died for your sins, I felt like I had won. And that was my badge. In other words, I could go back to my church and I could tell everyone how I witnessed to, thousands of atheists or whatever I was doing. And so I think in the same sense, I think that this gentleman last night, Tim, I think that he thinks that he wins if he can minister, quote unquote, the gospel. And the gospel to him is that Jesus died for our sins. And so his appeal is very much the gospel. The focus of his argument is the gospel. Everything else outside of the gospel is really superfluous. And this is why he doesn't really care to have, good, training that is in philosophy, a good training in any discipline, actually, not even linguistics, and they supposedly think so much about the Bible. That's unfortunate. But my point is, I think what Christopher was looking at, because he's been in so many board meetings with us, he knows that this is true. He knows that they feel a great sense of winning if they can simply share the gospel. And I think that Christopher last night was wanting to take this guy and say, okay, share the gospel, do what you need to do, but let's see if we can go past that if we can. Mm-hmm. And so in order to do that, I think that he was simply taking an approach, trying to get this gentleman to open up. And he was very, very kind in doing so. And so I can understand Alex being concerned about, saying different things, but that wasn't, nothing I don't think out of Chris's mind was intended to throw Alex left or right. He really advocates, what Alex is doing. And so how can we solve this, Dr. Shook? How can we solve all of this polemic chat and what's going on tonight? Right now, Christopher and Alex Botten are on the same show right now on a different network, and here we're having this chat. How can we bring some resolve quickly with people who really enjoy rational talk.
Oh, well, I think we've heard some good clues. I'm not sure if I'm the right one to try to connect the dots and bring them together. I'll take a stab at it. I think we've been talking about how if we need the level of discourse to improve, somebody's got to take responsibility for that. And you know, if it's not going to be them, then it has to be us. Because the old tactics of just shouting at each other and accusing each other and shifting burden of proof, are they working? Well, no. I mean, we can all kind of see that. So if we can lure fundamentalists who need to witness and describe their worldview into conversations where they actually feel comfortable showing where they're getting this from, why they find it a comforting worldview, why they think it has answers, then you know you can get them into a place where you know they're not going to admit faults and flaws, they're not going to yield to your Socratic dialogue, but you might have at least interesting conversations where the audience, who's perhaps quiet but they're listening hard, they'll be able to see the flaws for themselves without us pointing fingers and laughing and being scornful. Mm-hmm. So the most you can do is expose it to air and let it dry out, and you know, and let it be what it needs to be. And I think we can do that while being true to ourselves. Namely, we respect good reasoning. We can respect people who at least can explain to us where they get their reasons from and why they think there are better reasons than other reasons. This is the only way anybody's going to really understand each other's positions. And of course, you know, we have to take responsibility for people yet to come to enter conversations down the road. If we leave behind us a trail, a litter of just garbage, of just, you know, not getting anywhere, nobody ever learning anything, what kind of, you know, model or example are we setting for people who have to pick up and carry on these conversations, you know, after we leave Hangouts? So I really think that by setting the good example and trying to have reasonable engagements with those who feel that they can then open up and be reasonable with us as best they can, we're not going to reach agreement or consensus. That's not what this is about. This is about making sure that if you've got reasons, you ought to be able to stand on your own 2 feet and explain them without repeating yourself. If you've got a better method than somebody else's method for learning about the world, you ought to be able to explain why your method is better and what better results you're getting. I think we can be a model for demanding that sort of engagement, because if we don't set standards, who will? You know, we see the standards dropping everywhere and we complain. Well, we've got to do something about it.
I agree.
I think
I'm really concerned about, you know, when you have a show like we had last night. I thought that Christopher really did a wonderful job in really nuancing what his presuppositional argument actually did, that is, when applied, and I'm talking about a particular kind. And yet at the end of the show, since the end of that show, many people have become so incendiary. I mean, we're hearing the MF, you know, go off the charts almost. And so when you start hearing this kind of language from people who claim to be so rational, my question is, why?
You know,
what are your thoughts on that?
I think we need to go. We need the rational, but we in addition to that, you know, people like Alex, people like Chris, people like Tim, people like me, we need to know that we're appreciated just for being people, you know, and that our feelings count, that we're, you know, we're together here on this blue marble, and that there is a sense in which even the discussion we're having is not really more important than our value as human beings. If we are compassionist, if we're humanists in that sense, then there's something even larger than the perspectives that we have, that we find in the value of being human. And I think that what we need to do with Alex is somehow, you know, if he's feeling thrown under the bus, to be sensitive to how he feels, but let him know that we deeply appreciate him, that we like him as a person. We need what he can offer us, and without him, there's less that we have as a group to offer, because it's as we come together, we're each learning from each other so much, and so I think that there's a sense in which community is a part of that. Now, when we're discussing the ideas, of course, being rational is radically important, but we're discussing the ideas. People, and we're more important than the ideas that we're discussing in a very real way, and we can do that. And I think that Chris did a real good job of treating Tim like a human being, and then dealing with the ideas that Tim has, is the ideas that Tim, the human being, is endorsing and embracing. And so that was, I thought, well done.
Well, I found out what the problem was with me treating Tim like a human being.
Good. What was that?
The problem is, apparently Tim has a history, according to the atheists that I just talked to on another show, and I should have taken that history into consideration. Maybe. Now, and you know, and I'm being a little tongue-in-cheek here, but the question was raised: should atheists or Christians' history on YouTube, you know, considering that we are dealing in a YouTube kind of universe, or you know, their history on the internet, be taken into consideration when we choose to give them a platform?
That's a military strategy. You know, if you're a soldier and you come up to the front, and if the soldier in front of you has fallen and is slain, and you're in his position, you take over where he left off. But that's more of a battle lines kind of thing. You're having a relationship, and I think that you need to consider the things that have been done and the history that may be there. But then again, I think that you very carefully turned the direction of that conversation, creating a whole new history, which I think will be a far better history to be dealing with.
Yeah, this is another case, Chris. I get it, but I don't see why atheists have to adopt religious tactics. Last I checked, it was Christianity that only takes the past of what you have done into account, and once the verdict is slapped on you, then there is only eternal punishment without the possibility of any sort of, you know, turning back, repentance, or forgiveness.
Excellent.
And that's now the standards by which atheists are being held to. Once a Christian has behaved badly towards one atheist, all other atheists have to forever condemn and cast the Christian into perdition. Oh, okay. Well, that's interesting.
You're not going to live with that. Yeah.
It really sounds like evangelical atheism in a sense.
Horrible. Can I speak to
There's
that?
the revival. Yeah, I mean.
Well, and that's a
May I speak to that, actually?
Oh, go ahead, Ozzy.
Just this idea of evangelical atheism is something that bothers me a lot. But I mean, there's some truth in it. That's sort of what I was alluding to when I said, well, we don't want to end up where we have a creed where there's a way to be an atheist, and you're not allowed to break ranks and be critical of other atheists. I'm of the opinion. I mean, I see eye to eye with Sam Harris on the issue of religious moderates. One of the problems that a lot of atheists, such as myself, have with religious moderates is so many of them provide luxurious cover for fundamentalists because they're always so quick to circle the wagons and protect the whole discourse of faith, and that you know, there are liabilities there. So what we need are people like the people in this room who are religious and theists and Christians who are not prepared to do that, who are going to say, no, we're going to be critical of our own. There are people within the Christian community who we all think are Christians, but who are just, you know, doing wrong and saying wrong. And I think we as atheists especially those of us who are self-described rationalists, have to understand that we are not more rational simply by virtue of the fact that we are not religious or have shed religion. Your critical thinking skills and IQ don't go up just because you don't believe this stuff anymore. It's important to keep that in mind. Everyone sort of says that they know that and understands that, but you sort of got to feel that in your bones. And one of the corollaries of that, I think, is that we have to sort of police our own. We have to be able to say, no, look, sometimes one of us steps out of line and goes too far. And that's what people on both sides of this are doing. But we have to be careful. And I'm not one of those people that thinks, oh, we always have to be united and there's no room for division. No. We want to marginalize certain people, but we want to marginalize them for the right reasons. And it isn't because you're not a good enough atheist or anything like that. In my view, the enemies is not theism per se. Theism is in my view a species of irrationality, but there are worse forms of irrationality. And not only religion is a form of irrationality, there are all kinds of other kinds, political and superstitions and such, but there can be irrationality within the atheistic community, and so the enemy is just irrationality wherever we find it, and dogma, and it isn't necessarily that you have to oppose everyone who is an atheist, and even if they have a terrible history, if someone wants to give them some airtime and talk to them, look, that's okay. That's not the end of the world. We shouldn't get too offended by that. So,
and you can you can deal with the irrationality when it occurs, as it occurs, and you don't necessarily have to take it all the way back to the root of the worldview. You don't have to do that. It'd probably be more effective to say, now that doesn't make sense to me, and I'll tell you why. Just deal with that. That's good enough.
Hey, can I say something real quick about what Bob was saying about?
Yes.
Hey, Bob. You were saying something about the military strategy, and I think that's one of the things I noticed most of all lately is this contrast in styles between Christopher and Alex. And I think really it goes to the root of like when YouTube first hit, and it was like two warring factions. You had the atheists and the Christians, and they were both really polarized and both really just out to get each other. And that rhetoric was really high for a long time, and it's kind of died down now and changed tone. Yeah. But there are still some that have held on to that old, really militant, angry, let's go get each other and just bite each other's heads off. And so, I mean, I think what we're seeing is it's a contrast in styles, it's a contrast in strategies, I think, in how to deal with each other. Are we going to continue to look at each other as two warring factions? Because like what I'm hearing, what I'm feeling from Alex is like he's basically saying, like, whose side are you on? You know what I mean? It's like Christopher's doing this thing that's like betraying a member of his own team, and it's like Christopher saying, well, I'm not trying to be a part of this like boring faction game anymore. At least that's what it seems like to me.
I'm waiting for the video. Epic rap battles, where we get the priests up on one side, and
a few minutes ago, Ozzy was speaking, and I could have been so offended because he made some remarks against theism. But I have to realize that he's not speaking against me. It's not us against them. He doesn't have that mentality. He's simply making a comment about theism in general, and I think that a lot of people wear their feelings on their shoulder, and in both theistic and atheistic camps, and I think that we need to encourage people to get past that. We need to encourage people to get involved in conversations and allow things to be stated without being so sensitive concerning that, because I don't see how we can move forward as human beings unless we are willing to do that.
I think
May I say something to that, Dr. Jones?
Yes, go for it.
Yeah, when I say that I think theism is a species of irrationality, I mean when I say that, and I know that some people are definitely going to be offended by that, but I hope that just by my manner, people understand that I don't say it to offend. It is not. I understand that is going to be offensive, and it's unavoidable. But I don't want to shy away from the fact that I know that I'm offending people when I say these things. But I don't say it to offend, and I mean that makes a big difference. And I think that what happens a lot of the time is people say things specifically to provoke and just tick people off, and there's sport in that. And this is one of the reasons I think that we sort of have the discourse that we have on, especially on YouTube, is this stuff is fun. I mean, I'm not ashamed to say it, I love YouTube drama. I love this stuff. I love to watch this. It's great sport. I don't own a TV. I don't watch reality TV shows. I watch this stuff. And and it's hard not to get entangled with it once you join the conversation, and I find myself somewhat entangled in it. I mean, I was asked today by someone, sort of whose side am I on this, and my reaction is like, I have to take a side on this. I can't just sort of, I'm not on a team, that's not how it is, and that's what we have to sort of avoid.
A few minutes
this
ago,
idea that we're on teams.
A few minutes ago, when you made those comments, I said, "Amen, I like that," and then I held my breath and I said, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm a theist," and so it's I mean, it's a lot of fun to me. I enjoy critiquing, in a sense, my own backyard. I don't mind that, but I'm not convinced that all theists and atheists are willing to critique themselves. Mm-hmm. I don't think that people are willing to listen in conversations. I see a lot of monologue to monologue going on, and I think that Christopher, and I'm taking up for Christopher because I think that I really know Christopher in his intent, that is, in that show last night. I think that he was wanting true dialogue. He was tired of monologue to monologue. I think he was going after something. And I think that people who are listening need to be thick-skinned enough to say, go ahead, host, Christopher, do your job. Try to get a meaningful conversation with a guy who has been so wrong in times past. And Dr. Shook really knocked the ball out of the park a few minutes ago, saying, wow, what are we, just like the religious people who have held our sins against us, and are we going to this hell somewhere? Are atheists doing that these days? I mean, come on. I mean, we need to mature. And so, I don't know.
To me, there's also a problem
just
of
making points.
To me, there's a problem of identity that also is hard for all human beings, I think, to deal with. For example, I have certain notions and views, and these are notions and views that are the result of bringing whatever skills I possess to the experiences I've had. If I had different skills, I guess I wouldn't be me. If I had a different history, would I still be me? I don't own the notions and the beliefs and the points of view that I possess as me. That's just how what I'm doing with what I've gone through, where I've been, and where I seem to be going. It's just part of the navigation. It's only part of the map. It's not me. And so I don't have to have my identity. And I don't know if this is connected with it, but my identity isn't wrapped up in what I think. It's just what I think. And I have to think, I suppose, and I have to deal with things. But I'm fully aware of the fact that had my experience been very different, I'd be thinking very different things, dealing with very different issues. So, I don't really identify with that. It's only my history. It's not me.
I think that's a really good point, because dealing with the here and now is really all we can do, isn't it?
And our future is what's coming. Our past is, in a sense, I even say that I don't, this concept that the Christian has, if you've ever gotten drunk, you're a drunkard. And I said, well, that means if I was ever a fundamentalist, I'm a fundamentalist. Oh no, I'm damned forever. But no, you're not your past, and if anything, as I grow up, as I change, as I go through various things, I'm really, if I'm going to identify myself with any of my history, I'm going to identify myself with the person I seem to be becoming, not the person I've been.
Christopher, would you do me a favor? I have been taking up for you all day long. That is, thinking that I really understood the intent of your heart and your direction in your show last night. Mm-hmm. Without me filling in the blanks, would you explain what your intent was so we can have this archived?
The intent of my show last night was, without sugarcoating it, was to ensure that there was a platform for Tim to explain without any gloss, without any interruption, without any bullshit, what his intent was when he had his discussion with Alex, what his methods were to achieve that intent, what the buildup was to the discussion with Alex from his perspective, and what the fallout was since the discussion with Alex from his perspective. I also wanted to ask him specifics about the primacy of existence argument, and that was pretty much it. What ended up actually happening was I kind of had a little exchange with him about the difference between internal versus external critiques in presuppositional arguments. That was a little bit of a surprise. And, you know, I did hold his feet to the fire about very specific questions, but what ended up happening from an optics perspective is some people thought that I threw Alex under the bus by admitting that Alex had a clever goal and method to achieve the goal when he had his discussion with Alex. And apparently
You mean
that's
Tim?
bad. Tim, that's what I meant to say. No, when Tim had his discussion with Alex, that's what I meant to say. So apparently that's not a good thing to say.
What did you mean by clever in that particular usage?
Well, what I specifically mean by that is Tim will admit to your face that he's not very good at debating, and he will do what he can to avoid one-to-one debate formats because he knows he's not a one-to-one debater. So he was reluctant to have a one-to-one exchange with Alex, and Alex, you know, kind of pushed and pushed and pushed, and Tim reluctantly had Alex on the show, and you know, he said over and over and over again how reluctant he was to have Alex on the show. So I thought it was clever that having Alex on the show reluctantly, he was going to do something that was going to prevent Alex from getting what he wanted. Now, I admit that that's childish, but I think that it's clever in that it went to Tim's strength. Tim didn't have to debate. All Tim had to do was stick to a predetermined script, which was to frustrate Alex. And Tim said from the beginning, "Now, Alex, you're not going to leave, are you?" And then all Tim had to do was stick to his script in an attempt to frustrate Alex to leave, which he did. So it was clever.
May I interject?
Go ahead.
I'm glad you said that. You clarified that because that was one of the things that I thought was uncharitable. Because I thought it credited when I first heard it. I thought you were crediting Tim with too much, you know. But I now see what you're talking about. But I mean, had I had that exchange with him, and I heard you characterize it as clever, I would have thought, what the heck, clever? Why? I mean, that's excessively evaluative to call it clever. I mean, that's really commending it almost, right? And I think that must be how Alex heard it. I heard it that way too. And when I heard that, I thought, you know, I don't think that was right. I think that was wrong. I think you were laying it on a little thick there at the expense of Alex. And I think that's how Alex heard that and some other things that you said. I can't bring them to mind right now, but that kind of thing I think is probably what irked him. It would have irked me. I was so happy with the result that I was willing to overlook it, but of course I didn't have any skin in the game, so easy for me to say it's all worth it, you know. But I mean, for Alex, it's a lot more personal. So but I'm glad you clarified that.
You know, since we don't have the non-linguistic elements, this is why I'm asking Christopher to actually tell us what he meant. And so, Christopher, in other areas that people are being insensitive, well, maybe the term shouldn't be insensitive, where they are concerned, can you address those issues? Because I want people to understand what you were attempting to say, what you did say, your intent, the whole 9 yards, because I think it's unfortunate that we've had almost 24 hours of, rhetoric that has been negative, and to be honest with you, there are a lot of people out there who need to hear rational arguments going on rather than all of this fussing.
Okay, so I'm glad I was able to articulate what I meant by clever, and I'm glad that Ozzy was able to give me feedback, because I didn't realize that by using the word clever that it was so weighted, and that by giving a simple explanation like I did, that articulating it that way would give as much clarity as it did. Right? Because Ozzy, what you're admitting is by my use of the word clever kind of was mistaken, and the explanation that I gave kind of gave a little context for why I used it.
Yeah, absolutely. I was not on your side when I heard you say that. I was like, what the hell? I mean, that, it seemed to me that you were bending over backwards to sort of stroke Tim and coax him out. And that's okay if it's not if it's at your own expense or no one's expense. But it sounded like, you were making him sound like he'd completely outfoxed and outwitted Alex. And I thought, oh well,
And I would wonder how Tim took it.
Yeah, well, I don't know how Tim took it, but I remember thinking, I don't agree with that. I think you're really laying it on thick. So I'm really glad that you sort of clarified that, and I should say I believe you completely. I don't think this is a rationalization after the fact.
No.
I think when you say it now, it makes just the most sense in the world. But honestly, I didn't think too deeply about it. I haven't watched it again, so if you'd asked me what had bothered me, where I thought you were being uncharitable, I couldn't have summoned up an example because I haven't watched it again. But that when you said that, that was really it irked me at the time, like that was annoying. But I'm glad that you mentioned that. If you can think of other things like that you think or that irritated him or offended him, and you can shed some light, I'd be interested in hearing.
Yeah,
Alex said he was upset about the back padding, and I think that's what he was talking about. I think that was the back padding.
Specifically that kind of things, like me saying that his strategy was clever.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, I went on Alex's post-hang show and told him that, I was expecting, gladiator fight. I spoke in super hyperbolic terms about the fact that I was expecting there to be 2 men enter, 1 man leave, the octagon kind of fight. But I did tell him that I thought I was being a dick by saying I thought he should have not left. I thought he should have stayed. I thought that his approach was a little bit, it was not the approach that I would have taken. So I did say to him that we had differences of opinion about our approach, and I did put out a video where I talked to Dustin Seegers about his approach with Alex, where Alex had tried to demand answers of him and Cy 10 Bruggencate from a previous fundamentally flawed podcast. So I mean, I'm pretty consistent. I think that Alex's approach is flawed at a certain level, and I say it to him to his face, and I don't have any problem. I mean, I would say it to his face now. I'm saying it on an on-air hangout right now. I have no problem explaining that to him, but I don't think that that's a reason for us to not get along. I don't think that's a reason.
I agree. Can I ask you another question, Christopher?
Go ahead.
Now, I have someone who is sending me messages at the time that I'm asking this, because various people were concerned, and one individual is saying, well, you commended him for how patient he was with Alex, and that seemed to upset people. Can you address that?
Sure. Well, let's face the facts. There were 2 different conversational styles going on, right? And one of them was a very confident Alex who is used to debating and who is used to getting what he wants, and when he doesn't get what he wants, he demands it, and that's awesome entertainment. And to be honest, when he uses that, I'm usually in his corner cheering for him. But in this particular case, I saw it as lopsided, because Tim, from his perspective, in his corner, he looked a little nervous. He is not a debater. And he came prepared, and he stuck to his notes. And I was curious to know from Tim whether him reading from his notes was a purposeful strategy to keep his calm in the face of being demanded to answer questions. Because I thought that the calm that he maintained throughout that exchange was commendable, because he could have lost his cool, he could have given into passion, he could have gotten frustrated, but he didn't. And what's wrong with pointing that out?
Many times, and this also came up in a discussion that I was having today, it's like atheists want to correct theists, but it's like most atheists don't want any kind of correction coming from any kind of theist.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Did I frame the question right?
Say that one more time.
Okay. It appears, and this kept coming to me from various people, it seems like atheists want to correct, the mindset or the worldview, whatever you want to call it, of theists, but it seems like very few atheists can receive correction from theists.
Yes.
Or other atheists even.
Right, and so, from other atheists also. And so here we are, we have Christopher as an atheist, and, he's trying to critique maybe possibly Alex, but, is Alex rejecting? Is he saying that he's beyond correction? And in the world of being rational, we should desire that. We should desire to learn. I love being corrected, to be honest with you. It doesn't always feel good, but it's a wonderful journey that is to go through from one point to the next point to the next point to the next point. So what are your thoughts on that, Christopher?
Well, and so that this doesn't turn into a self-referential homunculus, I understand that I am being told that I could be doing something better, right? That's the whole point of what's going on. That's the whole point of what has been happening since last night's discussion with Tim, is that people are telling me that I could be doing something better, apparently. But what they're telling me that I can do better is contrary to my style. Right. And my style is purposefully civil and respectful. And so what they're trying to argue against, to me, from my perspective, is they're arguing against my purposeful, civil, and respectful style.
Right.
So why would you argue against civility and respect?
The word better is a weird word. A lot of people ask, like, what's the better guitar, or what's the better method, there's no such thing as better if you've isolated it from better for what purposes. The only thing that's ever better is something that actually achieves more of your actual goal, whatever that might be. If there's something that achieves it better, then that's better, but
can I tell you what my goal is, so that we can determine what better is?
Yeah,
my goal is to understand individual differences,
and I don't see how you could have done that better.
Okay. Another question that was asked of me today is, what did Christopher mean when he said to BibleThumpingWingnut that he got the shit end of the stick? What did you mean by that?
Okay, so here's exactly what I meant by Tim getting the shit end of the stick. Tim did not want to talk to Alex, but he was pursued, and he reluctantly talked to Alex. In reluctantly talking to Alex, he had to prepare in talking to Alex. And he cleverly prepared a goal and had a method to achieve that goal in preparing to talk to Alex. He didn't want to talk to him. Imagine being in that position. Imagine you put out a bunch of YouTube videos that a lot of people disagree with. That's fine. But some of those people want to face-to-face interact with you about those videos that you put out. But all you want to do is put out videos, and you recognize that you're not good at face-to-face interactions. But somebody hunts you down and pesters you to have a face-to-face interaction after you tell them time and time again that you don't want to. Don't you think you're getting the shit end of the stick?
I might be I might be wrong here, but was there not videos coming out and personal messages coming out from Tim that kind of precipitated this whole thing?
I think it went both ways.
I think it went both ways. Now, I'm not saying that Tim is innocent. Let me put that out there from the get-go. Tim is not an innocent bystander. Tim is not like, poor Tim. Poor Tim was just not doing anything, and Alex pursued him ravenously. You know what I mean? That is not the point that I'm making. Tim puts out some crazy videos. let me put it out there right now. I don't agree with Tim on his position. I agree with Tim as a human being. Tim deserves the respect that all human beings deserve. Tim's position, I totally disagree with. Tim's videos, I totally disagree with. So what? What difference does it make if Tim says things in his videos that I disagree with? Does that mean that he's answerable to me? Does that mean that I'm the arbiter of truth on YouTube? No. Does that mean that Alex is the arbiter of truth on YouTube? That Tim has to answer to Alex? No. There are boundaries.
No, I guess what I'm saying is that by putting himself out there, and because correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think he put out a challenge there that he was open to a debate, and that at the very next debate he was going to bring the presup argument, and that's what precipitated Alex to come at him, and then there was a back and forth going on there. So ultimately, Tim kind of put himself in a position. Would you not agree?
I wanted to say that also, Christopher. I mean, like, to use it as an example, sort of a counterexample, if you were putting out videos for years, I mean, Tim has been at this for years. You can go on his channel and see his stuff. And, you know, if you have been putting out videos saying, you know, I've got the awesome argument that shows definitively that there is no God. There is no God, and no theist is ever going to show me up. You know, if you were doing that, some theists might take issue.
I totally agree.
So that's what he was doing. That's basically
and
what he was doing.
the reason why I'm laughing is because Bible Thumping Wingnut's videos literally say that.
Yes.
I mean, they literally do. I mean, he really does put out videos that say that, you know, the presuppositional argument cannot be defeated.
So he shouldn't be surprised. He shouldn't be surprised when people come after him, you know.
No.
And he dodged it for a long time.
He did dodge it for a long time, but
it's the gunslinger mentality, you know.
Well, you shouldn't say gunslinger, Bob, because he put out a video of somebody shooting a gun, and he overdubbed something. He overdubbed something about.
I saw that, and I'm
Very
thinking, what the hell is that? I couldn't believe it. I forgot about that, but yeah.
But this is not a pylon on Tim. This is not a pylon on Tim. But I did want to put it out there explicitly that I don't agree with the content of Tim's videos. But here's the deal: even if I put out a bunch of videos that were crazy talk, that were batshit crazy challenges to anybody, if somebody contacted me about a debate and I said I didn't want to debate them, those boundaries still need to be respected.
I agree.
Yeah,
now,
absolutely.
Let me ask you another question, and I'm trying to get people to understand you. I'm trying to get people to understand even the New Covenant group, because there has been much slander today against you and also NCG. Did you feel at any time going into this show last night, did you feel like you were walking on eggshells?
Tonight, this show right here?
No, the show last night.
The show last night. No, I felt super comfortable. You know, Tim and I have a history, and we have been nice to each other, and that's what our history consists of. So whatever history Alex and Tim have is different than the history that Tim and I have. Tim and I have a history of being nice to each other. So guess what we were to each other last night? Nice. So I didn't have any problems walking on eggshells.
Now, do you feel you've been made to walk on eggshells in the outcome?
No, I'm feeling pretty confident.
Okay.
There was a moment this morning where, like, literally, my first post this morning, I think, was my wife woke me up to look at the Facebooks. What's going on, everybody? Because literally, Donna woke me up this morning like, if you don't post something on Facebook, I'm going to, and you don't want me to. Because my phone was becoming radioactive because it was going bing, bong, bing, dong, 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 bong, bing, bing. I was getting private messages, text messages. It was blowing up from, like, Facebook messages. It was just going berserko. So there was like 5 minutes this morning where I was going, wow, some people are upset with me. Should I be afraid of that? And then those 5 minutes passed, and I realized this is not something that I'm going to let affect me, because I'm me, and I have a support network. And that support network is not only the New Covenant group, but I'm a grown-ass man, and I have a support network that is the New Covenant group, but I also have family and friends, and I recognize the context of this particular event in my life, and it's not worth upsetting me.
And it's a tempest in a teapot.
And it is a tempest in a teapot.
That's my favorite Christopher quote from this whole situation.
Thank you.
Now, how can we move on from here, Christopher? I want to know your thoughts, because, you know, you have been in the hot seat. You have been the one who has been under fire. So what should we do to move on here?
I think that what we need to do to move on is keep on keeping on.
Yeah.
You know? We're just going to keep doing what we do.
Sure.
We're just going to keep doing what we do, and excuse me. And I think the New Covenant group has gotten a few more people to see what we do, how we do, when we do what we do. And it might have resonated with a couple of them.
I anticipate this is going to be a very positive thing, personally.
I do too.
So did I.
Because, I mean, you know, we're trying to do something that isn't commonly done. We're trying to bring people who are not traditionally together. And what we're doing is we're going through the kind of feelings that can sometimes create. Well, hey, you know what? We need to know what those are, and we need to deal with them. And here's one of those things, you know. And we'll deal with this, and we'll move on. And like you said, Chris, keep on moving on. And so I anticipate that, you know, although there may have been a few ruffled feathers here and there, that I think it's going to calm down, and people are going to stop after a while and realize, what is it we're trying to do here? And what it is we're trying to do here is in some ways unwittingly and unintentionally provocative. So, okay, there goes a little button. Got pushed right there. Let's figure out where they are and be aware of that, and you know, just so move on.
Yeah. I don't think that this is a huge I don't think this is a huge bump in the road at all. I think that this is an opportunity, and I think that that's how this should be viewed.
That's how I felt all day about it.
Me too.
I really did.
Yeah.
I contacted Alex Botten earlier today and invited him to be on my show tomorrow morning, which would be in the afternoon for him. I think that would be a 5 p.m. for him and a 3 a.m. for me. Central Daylight Time. He has not agreed yet, but he felt very, very uncomfortable. And I'm hoping that we can end this hangout whenever we do by making sure that Alex feels comfortable and accepted and loved unconditionally, because he has a dynamic about him that's wonderful. I've seen him do so much good for so many people, and I don't want him to feel thrown under the bus, because I don't think that Christopher was trying to do that. And sometimes, you know, language is a tough thing to wrestle with. And so what needs to be said here tonight? That is to keep everybody, in a sense, on the same page, not trying to get consensus in the sense of everybody in agreement, but what can we do to keep moving forward with the kind of diversity that we really have here?
Well, there's a couple things we can do, and one thing is I just sent an invitation to Alex Botten to come to this hangout. So hopefully he'll accept the invitation, because I understand he's in the comment section commenting on the fact that he wasn't invited to defend himself. So Alex, if you're watching, the invitation is for this particular hangout is in your Facebook private messages, and you're more than welcome to join us and give us a chin wag. And I think that that's the most transparent thing that I can do to move this conversation forward, Dr. Jones.
Okay, I've been informed by several people that he is in the chat. I think other people are sending him the same encouragement. And I want to go on record as stating to Alex, we very much love you, support what you're doing. All of you guys, Jim Gardner,
Definitely,
Dr. Hunt, I mean, you guys are doing a wonderful job. And I think that every time that I've watched you perform your shows, I've learned so much. And this is the thing that I love
Fiona.
about...
She's fantastic.
Yeah, you know, the thing that I like about atheists and theists coming together and having conversations, I learn all the time. I'm just amazed at atheists. They teach me so much, and I love listening more than I do talking, to be honest with you, these days. But when I was this gung-ho theist, I didn't want to listen. And Bob, I think you can identify with that.
Definitely. You know, I like Alex. I like Jim Gardner, and you know, when I was a fundamentalist, I couldn't stand it whenever anybody seemed to be making headway that was counter to the cause. But really, it is the people who had an opportunity to say things that arrested me when I was prepared to be honest, that forced me to have to, you know, rethink, modify, or abandon ideas. This is how we grow as people, and so, you know, we need as many rational voices in this conversation as we can have. And all the different styles and personalities that come out. I think, I even think there's room, although you know, these radical, dramatic people, some of the angry people. I think that some of the angry atheists out there who are ranting and raving on YouTube, I think a lot of us theists, we need to know the kind of anger we've provoked. In the way we've dealt with things, we need to know this makes people angry, you know, and things. I'm not so sure that's the best way to deal with it all the time, but I tell you, we don't want to protect ourselves from pretending we haven't at times really violated people to a point where they're very angry with what we're doing. You know, we need that. We need this information.
Let me welcome Alex Botten to the hangout. Welcome, Alex.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I can hear you very well.
Well, let me just try and get some better sound going on anyway. So, this is always a good idea.
While Alex is doing that, may I speak to Dr. Jones's question about what we can do moving forward?
Yeah, that would be awesome, Ozzy. I didn't mean to leave you out, and I was going to apologize to you for a while ago because you did want to say something, and I have to say this. So many people in East NCG are saying, wow, have you heard Ozzy? And I said, yeah, just over and over again. And so people are amazed about Ozzy. I mean, you have become an icon here. So,
okay.
Go ahead and speak.
Oh, what I'm going to say is going to sound absolutely paltry and stupid now after a build-up like that. But thank you. It's very nice to hear. What I was going to suggest was a sort of extension of what I said earlier, but we need to police our own. And I think that one of the things that doesn't go on enough in the atheist community is self-criticism. You know, it's very easy to criticize people on the other side. And one thing that I was very gratified about recently is there's been a YouTube atheist going on. I won't mention him, but who's been going on for months and months now about trying to establish a connection between literal mental illness and religiosity. That if you're religious, you are literally suffering from a mental disorder. And this person has become notorious, and he's been called out by a number of people. And I'm happy to say he's been called out by a lot of atheists who've said, "Hey, no, stop. This is a mistake. There's no critical thinking going on here. You're just cooking up arguments to try to discredit religion and religious people is a horrible thing." And he's being marginalized. And I think this is such a good thing. We need to sort of either marginalize people like this, or just sort of castigate them enough that they change their tone or see the errors of their way. And I don't mean that we have to sort of do anything more than be critical of them. That's all I mean. And I'm not talking about Alex here, but one of the things that we can do in the New Covenant group is those of us who are atheists, if we could remember to be more critical of other atheists. We do such a good job of criticizing theists, it would just be terrific if we were more critical of our own. I've tried to do some of this myself. I'm not especially gifted at it. It's hard to do. But I think if we did sort of created a climate of doing this, then when sort of people come to New Covenant group who are atheists and they see that this goes on, that this is normal, that this is fine, and that we don't have to hate each other's guts over it, that's something that sort of can then spill over and spread out of the New Covenant group and then sort of infect the rest of the online community. And so I wonder if we could just sort of set the standard for self-criticism a little higher among those of us who are atheists at the New Covenant group.
And also that it's not a betrayal if something like that happens.
Right, that's what I mean.
It doesn't mean that you're stabbing them in the back and taking the side of theists or anything like that. That's
right, because I think we all tend to be naturally peevish, and protective of our own, and I think it's actually a good thing. I think it's a mark of sort of the intellectual health of a community that, like in the scientific community, when you have a new theory, and you go and you present it, boy, don't expect friends. Everyone's there to rip your thesis apart. That's what goes on, and that's what we have to expect. And we shouldn't make exceptions for people within our own community and our own side. And I think if we could sort of cultivate an atmosphere like that, then what Ben just said would happen, where people would come to expect this sort of thing, wouldn't come to regard it as a kind of a betrayal, and I think that happens too much, and so we should work towards that.
Alex Botten, we want to hear from you tonight. Share your thoughts.
What do you want to know?
Well, we've been talking tonight about the show last night, and I've questioned Christopher on what he meant by various things, and he has shared with all of us, including our audience, his feelings on X, Y, and Z. And so I know that there has been hurt that is in your heart, and I shared with you this morning. I said, I can understand pain. I can understand many people talk about me, not always in a positive sense. I can understand pain. I can also understand that in conversations we misspeak, we mishear, and sometimes we're just, it's what language is. It's clumsy in a sense. And so I'm wanting to see some form of reconciliation, because I really don't want there to be anything negative going on, because I think that what you're doing is marvelous. Everyone here has said amen to what I'm saying, and so I want to clear the air. I want to see something good come of this. We're human beings. This is not about theism. This is not about atheism. We're not arguing in that kind of context. So let's put our theism and atheism to the side, and let's just pretend like we're dealing with human beings, just that kind of context, if you will.
Well, I don't know really what I've got to say about the whole issue. The thing with Tim was after several months of him kind of making various comments on videos saying, "Oh yeah, you know, my argument is undefeatable," and all this kind of stuff. And I've also seen the way he's kind of treated other atheists online for quite some time. And I figured that because I'm not kind of easily intimidated, it might be the right thing to kind of maybe take the battle to him a little bit. But when I went on his show, I went on with every intention of actually having a discussion with him, just a straightforward chat with him. And I had no idea that he was going to start with this dishonest quote mining nonsense. To be honest, I think I was incredibly patient with him. I think I treated him far better than he's painting it. He's trying to paint out that I was some kind of hysterical, irrational bad guy. Whereas I think I was extremely patient with him. I was forceful with him, but I think he needed to be pushed because he was unwilling or unable, I don't know which, to make his argument. And I think it became kind of almost laughable towards the end, especially when he was refusing to even say whether his God needed to exist to be able to do anything. He clearly made it, well, I should say, he made it very clear during the conversation that he wasn't actually listening to what I was saying. At one point where I'd given a description of how we account for knowledge, and he said, "Oh, well, I let you get on with your primacy of existence stuff," and I was like, "Well, I haven't mentioned that." And I said, "Are you even listening to me?" He's like, "No." So the guy was incredibly rude all the way through, quite confrontational. And the week before, he'd made a kind of promo video about it. And don't forget, this guy invited me onto his show. He didn't have to have done that. He made a promo video that was basically attacking me. My promo video, on the other hand, was just saying, it's going to be on at this time, on this date. Be sure to come and have a watch. So he's been quite antagonistic during the week beforehand, and since he's been extremely antagonistic. He's basically spinning the whole thing and telling his followers that he's saying things, or that he's saying to them that I've said things that I haven't said, and things like that. So yeah, it's been a bit tricky to deal with. So I kind of felt that when the show happened with Chris, I was kind of hoping at least he'd slightly call Tim to account for his shocking behaviour, but it didn't seem to be the way. He seemed to kind of get quite an easy ride, and I think that's why myself and quite a lot of other people are quite disappointed about it.
What are your thoughts after hearing Alex, Christopher?
Well, I can see how invested he is in the talk that he had with Tim. I guess I'm still a little confused about what my role was, and how the current upset is tethered to my responsibility and my lack of fulfilling that responsibility.
Well, I would say that if you've got a situation where somebody who you've kind of made kind of overtures of friendship towards is treated extremely poorly on another person's show, and then you have the person who committed the rudeness on your show, and then you just kind of basically give him an easy ride and don't say to him, because I was just saying this on, I was on the same show as you were on a moment ago, the Skeptical Fence show or something, and I was just saying that you can have that respectful conversation, you can have the kind of perfectly polite conversation, but you can say, Tim, your behaviour last week was a little unusual. What was that about? You kept on talking over Alex. You refused to answer any questions. Why was that happening? So you can have that conversation, but it seemed to me that it was more about, oh, that was a super clever way of doing things. I don't think it's been helped by the subsequent videos, like the one with you and Dr. Shook sitting on the bench seemed quite patronising. And to be honest, I'm kind of, it's 4 o'clock in the morning here. I feel like I've spent the whole weekend being talked about by everybody and not really talked to. So I don't know. I'm just
Welcome
feeling.
to YouTube.
Well, that's it. Yeah, but the thing is, I'm reaching the point now where I'm. What's the point even continuing doing stuff? There was a very half-hearted, fundamentally flawed earlier that I didn't particularly feel like being involved in.
If I could say, Alex, I can completely understand, the exhaustion of all of this for you, and we love what you're doing, and I think it's great what you're doing. Perhaps even the show with, I can't picture myself ever going on a show with Bible Thumping Wingnut. I just don't. I don't picture it going anywhere. But having been through it, and by the way, I wasn't aware of all of the stuff that was leading up to that show that you had, and so I understand really, how this has got to make you feel, because you put a lot of your heart into this, and you can't get anywhere with some of the people like that you're dealing with. So I can understand that. But I also, in knowing Chris, has a way of trying to find a way of getting around all of the BS and try to really engage people in a conversation, and to get people perhaps at that level who traditionally can't even be brought to that level is difficult. But also, I think that there's a sense in which it's probably not over. I would think that Chris has now given Tim an opportunity to approach and really start talking about his ideas, where they can now actually be critically looked at.
But the thing is, I don't think Tim has the ability to do that. I don't think Tim can look at ideas critically. All it's done is empowered Tim. The result of it has been that Tim has just sent an increasing torrent of smug messages to me.
Really? That's crazy.
Yeah, and his little kind of fanboys have done the same. So that's been the outcome of it.
I don't think there's anybody here at all impressed with what Tim did. There's nobody here.
Alex, his videos that he made following your debate were, and what he's doing now, these are all desperate attempts to wring a victory out of an embarrassing performance, right?
He's just antagonizing you.
Totally.
He's just antagonizing you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, he has to know. I mean, everybody knows this, right? Even his supporters have to know that it was a debacle on his end over there.
It's the Charlie Sheen approach.
And the only criticism that they were able to raise was one criticism that I raised, that I thought you were somewhat ingracious in victory with him sort of giving a beat down at the end there. But and that's the only thing that they can point to, right? I mean, he had no cards, he had no hand, okay, and so you really shouldn't let that bother you. I mean, that they're sending you this. I mean, it's the most predictable thing in the world. You know what these characters are like, so I mean, just block them and put those people behind you. They are desperate to try to be able to high-five themselves over this, and this is the best that they can do. So, let them. I mean, it's like Jason Burns, calling you out. It's not much of an insult.
No matter how that conversation had gone, this is the way it would have turned out. These are the kinds of videos that would have been made, no matter what had happened. Because that's just that style.
Well, what I was going to say is, I mean, it's very easy to say it, but to be, and if it was somebody else in the same situation, I'd be saying exactly the same thing if it was someone else. But being at the receiving end of it over it's almost coming up 2 weeks now since Tim started with his campaign, it becomes a little bit tiring after a while, and it's I don't know. I've kind of reached the end of my tether with it. I've reached the end of what I want to deal with.
Can I offer an outsider's opinion? Take it for what it's worth. When I was introduced to the precept argument, I went on the internet, and YouTube kind of led me to 2 points really. It was the New Covenant group and Fundamentally Flawed. There was others out there, but those were the 2 shows that really kind of pulled me in and encouraged me to watch more of what they had to offer. Mm-hmm. So if that offers any sort of encouragement at all, I hope it does. I think that what both shows are doing are great, fantastic things, and it would be a shame if you decided to call it quits.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Yeah,
and,
I think
Alex, I want to say, after all of the pain that you've gone through dealing with a wingnut for the last 2 weeks, and I can understand that this is a very sensitive time for you, and after last night's show and possibly misunderstanding Christopher's intent, I do appreciate you coming on this hangout And so my question to you is, can we work this out as rational human beings tonight without it just causing more and more turmoil that is in other people's lives? I mean, you're an extremely intelligent, mature person, and I'm simply looking for some resolve so we can all move forward together. I'm not looking for people who all agree on the same terms, same logic. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm just looking for human beings who are willing to work together simply to move forward.
I'm at the point where I just want to put the whole thing behind me. You know, I've done what I think was the right thing to do. I think I've stood up to somebody who's been a long-term internet bully, who's really kind of gone to town on a lot of people I know, and I think he deserved the bloody nose that I hope I gave him. And I think I've done the right thing. And you know, the fact that I can't, you know, I find it almost incomprehensible the amount of chatter it's caused. It's just insane. I mean, at the moment I've got another window open and there's the Bible Thumping Wingnut shows on at the moment, and they're talking about me. The Skeptic Fence show was on, and I think that's still going on, and they're talking about me. And then this is going on, and they're talking about me. And probably something else is going on, and they're talking about me. And it's just completely kind of ridiculous. It's all I've done is stand up to somebody who I think, from my judgment, needed to be stood up to. And I stand by what I've done with that. I think that Tim is a bully and a blowhard. And I think he needed to be shown that he couldn't push everybody around. And yeah, I freely admit that I manipulated him into the point where he didn't have much of a choice about coming on the show, but he did still invite me. It was still his free will to do so. But he had made all these boasts of, like, you know, I never run from a debate, I never run and hide, you know, and so he kind of put himself in this situation where he brought it upon himself. He boasted so much over the preceding weeks that he didn't have much in the way of a choice. He kind of painted himself into the corner of having to do it. And on the show itself, he's the one that took the gun out and shot himself in the head. He made the decisions to act the way he behaved. And I just think, you know, the bottom line is he was incredibly rude to me on the show. And yeah, I think the thing is, I just think I've been painted as the bad guy, and I think it's unfair because basically Tim is really a nasty individual. He's not a nice person.
Well, you know, I can understand what you're speaking of, because, you know, I used to be a theist similar to that, believe it or not, and I'm ashamed of it, and I need to apologize to all atheists for being that way. But I want to ask you another question, and I'm certainly not trying to put you on the spot. But I have to ask this question because in my heart, I don't think that you think that Christopher was trying to do you wrong last night on the show. And this is just my perception. I think that you value Christopher's words and his heart and his direction. And I think that maybe because of all of this stress that you've been through, maybe it just got to you, because, you know, I think that Christopher was just trying to take an approach towards this particular gentleman, trying to, you know, get him to be a little bit more open, because are we not all, like, in a sense, like physicians trying to treat a patient? We're trying to have good bedside manners, trying to help someone to get well, because I think that everyone here would construe Wingnut as someone who is philosophically ill, something of that nature.
I would disagree.
You okay?
Hi guys, my name's Christian.
Yeah.
And I'm a theist.
Okay.
I am a friend of Tim's.
Okay.
I do not share in his presuppositional argument. I don't agree with that argument. And Tim, to me, Tim's a truck driver who thinks he's doing the right thing. He believes the Bible literally, and he thinks that he's helping people by bringing them to salvation. Now, I disagree with his tactics a lot of the times. I I'm not an apologist. I don't evangelize on my channel. I don't believe that I have any business trying to spread the gospel on YouTube. I think it's a farce. I think it's a joke. And from my understanding of what happened, and Alex, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I got the impression that you saw a chip on his shoulder and you did whatever you could to knock that chip off of his shoulder by goading him and calling him a coward and basically calling him out. And I would agree with you that his tactics were a bit unintellectual. I don't think he planned on having an intellectual debate of any kind. I don't think he planned on having a debate at all of any kind. I think he was emotionally disturbed by your name calling, and he set out to make a fool out of you. I think that's what his tactic was from the get-go because of your goating him.
Well, I think, Christian, the thing is, though, if you want to avoid people calling you out, or Tim, yeah, I should say, when I say you, I mean Tim. If Tim wants to avoid people calling him out, then he needs to stop swaggering around as if he's, the king of the internet, who is an undefeatable precept genius, who never, by his own words, quote, never runs and hides, and will always bring the precept to an argument, and cannot be defeated. I think, if you set yourself up like that, you're going to set yourself up for a fall.
I would agree with you. I would agree with you wholeheartedly, and I think that you were justified in inquiring to be on his show, but I just want to remind you that I think it was the way that you did it that invited the kind of treatment that you got, and I'm not condoning his treatment of you by any means. I don't want anyone to think that I am condoning or supporting his tactics. Christopher said that he was clever, and I would say sneaky, because that's what it appeared to me to be, scripted and sneaky. He wasn't looking to have a debate. He was looking to, pull a bunch of gotcha moments on you, and I believe intentionally was trying to get you to rage quit.
Oh, absolutely, and it was obvious from the very beginning that that's what his tactic was. That he was trying to push me to the point where I would go.
Okay, as soon as he said, "You aren't going to leave," I knew that's where he was going.
Yes.
Okay, I knew that's where he was going.
If I can interrupt this just for a moment, because other things that are important to talk about, but I don't think anything is as important as reconciliation tonight. That's my opinion. And so, agree. Once again, I'm asking you, Alex and Christopher. My first question would be to Alex. Do you really think that Christopher was attempting to throw you under the bus? I mean, you know him, you've heard him, you've talked with him many times, private messaged with him. I mean, he's an awesome person that we all love, and I really believe that you love him and you accept him. And so my question is there a possibility that, that Christopher, was just trying to, maintain his style, that is to talk with a particular guest, and it may be different than the way that I would speak to him? When Saitin Bruggencate was on my show, I received so much hate mail from theists, it was unreal. And I've learned just to, just let it go, and that's a very difficult thing. But it's what happens when you host shows. People have opinions and they get upset, and they will make your life miserable until you learn how to just let it all go. And so my question once again is, it's rather simple. Do you really feel like Christopher was trying to throw you under the bus?
I don't know Christopher well enough to be able to tell what his intentions were. I know Christopher from a few conversations online and some little bits of internet chatter. I don't know him well enough as a person. I don't know what Christopher's intentions are. I don't know what anybody who I'm dealing with's intentions are. So I'm not in a position to say that. I can't honestly say, oh, I think this or that about him, because I honestly don't know. I don't know how much he already knew of the way Tim behaves. If he knew a lot of the way that Tim behaves, then does that make it worse that he gave him a free pass, effectively? And if he didn't know very much about it, then does that kind of excuse that he gave a free pass?
Without getting into the free pass context, let's deal with the NCG, the New Covenant group. Do you think that we have a reputation of throwing people under the bus?
Again, I don't know enough about the New Covenant group to be able to comment. I can't make a judgment call on that because I don't know enough.
Okay.
I can't say, I know this or I know that about a group that I don't know that much about. Yeah. But I'm going to have to go in a minute because it's actually 4:15 in the morning here.
I like to say, at least speaking towards the notion of a compassionate community and reconciliation. Alex, we like you, and we hope that you stick around and we get a chance to actually get to know each other a lot better than we do, because we think the world of you. We think you have a lot to offer. And so I'm hoping that as we move beyond this, and the exhaustion this must have been for you, that a year from now we'll all be having a beer together and just remember when, But we like you, we do, we really do.
There are people from Fundamentally Flawed and also people from the New Covenant group and people outside the New Covenant group that really want to see reconciliation happen as quick as possible because they really don't see any kind of logic behind againstness, if you know what I'm talking about. They think that it's more sensible for human beings to come together and learn how to work out of the context of their diversity, things of that nature. And so, Christopher, is there anything that you can add to this conversation? I'm working as hard as I can trying to get something good to turn out tonight. I may fail, but I'm attempting here.
Well, I purposely kind of held back and let you do the talking, Dr. Jones, because I was curious to hear what kind of questions you had, and I was curious to hear what kind of answers Alex had. But Alex admitted, it's 4:15 in the morning there, so he needs to get going. But I wanted to hear it. I wanted him to hear it from me. Alex, know that my intentions have nothing to do with purposely throwing you under the bus. Know that, because I'm saying it to you right now. I did want to give, and I admit this, I did want to give Tim a platform to explain from his perspective the things that led up to the discussion that you and he had, the goal he had in the discussion that you and he had, and the methods he had to achieve that goal, and the fallout from that from his perspective. I admit that, no problem.
Can I interject slightly there, Chris?
Go.
I mean, the thing is, he does have a platform. It's called youtube.com/BibleThumpingWingnut, and it has 746 subscribers. He has that.
And you have a platform too. And the difference is hearing his position being asked from somebody like me, who disarms somebody, hopefully, if I'm achieving my goal, who disarms somebody in a conversational style, as compared to hearing somebody mouth off in the videos that they put out in the way that they want, I think is a welcome way to hear somebody communicate, and that's why I do what I do. So I also invited you to do the same thing after the fact. Admittedly after the fact, because last night's gig happened very rapidly, so it is what it is. But I do what I do to find out the individual differences of what people think. So I gave Tim that platform. He has his platform. It's a Bible Thumping Wingnut show. You have your platform. It's the Fundamentally Flawed show. So nobody really needs an additional platform. But I chose to ask Tim to explain his particular position because I found it interesting. I don't see anything wrong with that. But That being said, I was not trying to throw you under the bus in trying to do what my goal was. So I just want to make that explicit.
I mean, I don't.
You and I have difference of opinion in style, and that's fine, and we can talk about that. You know, you're more of a bulldog than I am. Cool. That we're at a crossroads about that. Let's move forward from that. I don't think that that's a reason why we can't still be cool with each other. I don't think that's a reason why we can't move forward in an awesome dialogue together. I still think that you're awesome, Alex. I might have said a couple things that were a little snarky today. I apologize for the snarkiness that I had today. I felt there was a little snark thrown at me today. I'll admit that I'm human.
It's great entertainment.
I'm sure it was.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, I want to move past it too. So if you're willing to move past it, I'm willing to move past it. It is a tempest in a teapot for me. This is not a big deal. But if it's a big deal to you, it's a big deal to you. I'm gonna stand by what I did. And I'm going to stand by the fact that I'm telling you right now that I was not trying to throw you under the bus. So I'm gonna let the merit of what I'm saying stand on its own merit.
I've not really got anything to say, so I'm just going to go.
Okay.
Alex, would you be so kind as to join me in the morning? I guess he's already gone.
No, yeah, he's already gone.
Yeah. I had invited him to be on my show in the morning, and hopefully he will be there. Can
I be really blunt for a moment?
Certainly.
Okay, hold on, guys. No.
Should we fasten our seatbelts?
Yeah, you should. I don't know Alex. Okay. I'm not really all that familiar with him. But I got the impression that he's like you said, Chris. He's a bulldog, and he presents himself as such on YouTube with his show and his aggressive stance and how he talks not only to theists but how he talks about theists.
Hey guys, real quick, you know what? The last thing that would be helpful right now is trash talking Alex after he leaves.
Yeah,
so
I don't think
we really
that's
ought to just wrap it up and go.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and agree with Ben on that one. So, Christian.
Well, I wasn't gonna trash talk him.
Well,
but
you already started, so we just don't need that right now.
Yeah,
but thanks.
I'm gonna end on a high note. If it's okay with everybody, the last little bit that I said, which was positive, I thought, I'm going to stand by what I did, I'm going to stand by what I said, and I'm going to stand by the fact that what I said was, I dig Alex. And I think that if he's willing to move forward, I'm willing to move forward, and I want this to be behind me, he wants it to be behind him. Let's let this be behind us.
If I can add just one more thing is that, I mean, it was past 4 o'clock in the morning, and he's not feeling the greatest about how things have turned out here. I think it would be fair to allow him some time to process everything that's gone on here.
He's probably so tired of dealing with this.
Right.
I've been dealing with this all day today.
Stressful.
I can only feel for the dude.
Stressful.
Certainly.
4 o'clock in the morning. He's been dealing with this all day.
And for the last few weeks, really.
Yeah.
Definitely. I would like everyone to have a chance to say something really, really positive, and I think it'd be best to end this hangout on a very, very positive note. Ozzy, what are your thoughts?
Well, my feeling is that the New Covenant group needs a lot of people with a lot of different voices and a lot of different styles. And we're going to clash sometimes. And I've sort of made it plain that I really like Alex. I like his style. He's got all kinds of balls. I mean, he takes on people that I have no time for. But someone's got to put crazy on parade sometimes, and he does it on his show.
Exactly.
He does it fearlessly. Someone's got to do that. But I mean, there's room for more than one kind of style, and I'm sure that he can see that, but I mean, he has. I think he has some legitimate reason to feel upset about what happened. But I mean, I think that everyone here is making it clear no one was out to hurt him. No one dislikes him. No one intended to be disrespectful to him. So, Alex, please, I hope you'll change your mind. We're all friends.
I agree. Bob.
Oh, hard to know exactly what to say. I think we've had a great conversation, and I think that before Chris left, after he left, when he comes back, we've gone around a number of issues, including taking a look at the kind of the background to all this. I think this is going to be positive. I empathize with Alex. He looked tired to me, and not just sleepy tired, but tired of all this crap, and I think the world of both Alex and Chris, so I really do think that we're moving on this. I'm glad that we're reaching out. I don't know that I'm interested in a quick reconciliation. That people need to work through what they need to work through in the time it takes to do it. But so I have a positive expectation of this. Because I think that Chris and Alex both do what they do because they care about doing it, and so they're not going to stop. But we'll work through this.
Yeah, so many times in life we choose the low road, and I think here we need to choose the high road. Let's take the high road and move on. Does anyone else have anything to say before we end this broadcast? Ben?
I would like to say, do you have anything to say, Ben?
No, I unmuted myself twice, which I just found out is not very effective. No, I mean, I just want to thank everybody for showing up. I really enjoyed the discussion, and I missed the early part of it because I was watching the Live Life and Christopher, so I'm going to go back and watch it on YouTube. But I really liked some of the stuff that Dr. Shook had to say. I thought he made some really good points, so I'm going to go back and re-listen to that for sure. But no, it's been really good, so thanks for having me on. Thanks for having the show.
Yeah. Is Dr. Shook still on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Shook, why don't you make some final comments?
I think that we can carry away some lessons learned, and I think we can anticipate that situations like this can be anticipated coming, because as we engage theists, these are theists who have pasts, and they're still smarting from engagements with atheists. Atheists are still smarting from their battles, and I think that we have to somehow simultaneously honor and give props to people who've been carrying on all sorts of battles in places where we wouldn't go and don't want to go, but so it's easy for us to say, oh, we're going to do things differently, we're going to do better over here in this other way. Well, yeah, that was great. Where were you when the fight was going on over there? So we have to sort of just keep perspective, and we have to recognize that people put their time and talents into doing things a certain way, and it's not the only way. But we have to say, well done for carrying the flag so far, and if we carry it a little bit farther, that doesn't mean we think you've been headed in the wrong direction. It's just, time for a different kind of engagement, and there'll be others after us who deem that we didn't do a good enough job. But the best we can do is carry on the best way we know how.
If I could say one more thing, Chris, you're one of my new best friends. I like you and I enjoy you a lot, and I am genuinely looking forward to the relationship you and I build, because I don't know, I click with you and I like you a lot, and so in fact, we're going to be meeting with each other here in New York, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm so psyched about it. And so but I you're one of my best buddies. I like you a lot. Really,
that makes me the winner.
And tomorrow night we will have Michael Dowd at the place with Christopher Maute and also Bob Graves. And we will also have Steve Shives on, and
Oh, yeah.
so that's going to be an exciting time together.
Very nice.
Oh, Chris, did I ever get that email? You were going to send me that chart?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna send that to you. I'm gonna get that email to you.
Okay, yeah, cool.
But as far as the purposes of this broadcast, I'm gonna stop broadcasting now. Thank everybody. I would like to thank everybody for coming out and hanging with us. Everybody check out the Ustream channel tomorrow, 10 to 10 Central. Ustream, NCG Studios. Dig it.